Having analyzed the main campaign, it only makes sense to keep going and go over the two sets of DLC. They are continuations of the main story and take place right after the base campaign. Before we start talking about the content itself, I have to say something about how they were produced. When the main game was releasing on the 20th of March 2020, they could be pre-purchased collectively as the Year 1 pass. They shot themselves in the foot with this idea, as it basically legally bound them to release the two promised DLC packs before the year was over. And we all know what happened in 2020. It's pretty clear the devs could have used some additional time for those campaigns. The pandemic also seems to have fizzled out any possibility of further years of content packs, as these are the only two we've received. These two campaigns tell essentially one story divided into two parts, 3 and 4 levels long respectively, though the final one is just a boss fight, so more like 3 each. The idea for them is kind of dumb, to be honest. They were supposed to end the story of the Slayer. The story that spans so many games, ages, locations, and actual real decades finally comes to an end in a $20 expansion with a clearly smaller budget than the main game. The finale of the saga was never going to be as epic and satisfying if it wasn't going to be a full-priced product. So, The Ancient Gods Part 1 starts off with a text prologue summarizing the events of the main game, and explaining how the fight still isn't over. Since Urdak has been overrun by demons, they threaten to use it to launch more invasions on other realms, including Earth. Okay, this makes sense, but is lame from a story standpoint. Given this new problem, it turns out we haven't really achieved any definitive goal. The first problem were the Hell Priests, the next problem was the Icon of Sin. Now it's demons in Urdak. It turns out the base game only covered an arbitrary but incomplete set of threats eliminated by Doomguy. Our first objective is to retrieve the body of Samur Maker, who will help us further. For some reason, he happens to be stored in this UAC Ocean Rig base. Now, of course, Samur Maker was with us back during the Battle of Taras Nabad. He's also the same being as Samuel Hayden. How? Well, you see, in Doom 4 there was no talk of this. He was just a human who became a cyborg, and Vega was just an AI. But Doom Eternal retroactively turned them into these ancient beings who've wiped their memories and put themselves on Earth to help the Slayer. This might be one of the worst retcons I've ever seen, and the worst thing is, it wasn't even really necessary for anything. What would have changed if these characters were separate beings? The way things are now, the only benefit is just a cheap plot twist. It would also be perfectly understandable how they know so much about the demons, hell priests, sentinels, etc., as they're supposed to have been studying these topics. The expansions start us out with all the equipment, upgrades, and unlockables of the base game, minus the Crucible, of course. It seems like a logical escalation to make things harder and more intense, but this leaves the progression in a weird place. What's the incentive for secret hunting now? Well, they've added 3 new support runes. Only one can be equipped at any time in a dedicated slot, on top of the ones you already have. This further layers the problem I've mentioned previously, of not having a reason to get more than one of them, especially since one of them is far better than the others. The Break Blast support rune creates an AoE when destroying weak points, which falters nearby enemies. Keeping enemies from doing anything is always a good thing, and you'll want to be destroying the weak spots anyway. Take Back lets you recover a lost extra life, if you manage to kill the demon who killed you fast enough. It's a pretty fun idea, but extra lives don't exist in Ultra Nightmare, which is where the majority of my playtime was spent anyway. They also still feel like a crutch and not like a core gameplay mechanism, therefore it's going to be underwhelming by design. Desperate Punch grants you Blood Punch double damage when below 75 health. Seems powerful. Too bad I never use it, because if you're down to less than half your max HP, you need to be doing something other than getting close to another enemy and risk your life further. I also just have a visceral negative reaction to equalizer abilities and skills in games, which essentially reward you for playing poorly, but punish you for playing well. This specific rune grants absolutely no benefit if you're topped off. What's weird is that the first and third support rune dispensers are locked behind Slayer Gate arenas. But not the second one. It's just chilling out here. To illustrate how rarely I bothered picking up more than one rune, in this playthrough I completely forgot the second rune didn't have an arena protecting it. I was so baffled, and I probably was on my first playthrough too, but I just don't remember because I might very well have only ever picked up the second rune once before. For each level, we also have 2 secret encounters, like in the base game, but completing them doesn't give you additional weapon upgrade points. Instead, beating both gives you a skin, meaning there's absolutely zero incentive to do them on repeat playthroughs, as the skin is already unlocked. The remaining secrets are mostly just soul spheres, BFG ammo, or extra lives. Good to have, but far from exciting. This is my first point of contention with the DLCs. The exploration rewards are lacking. For some reason, our new base of operations is this Ark carrier. We teleport to the UAC Atlantica facility, and our first goal is obtaining the key to Samur's body. You'll quickly notice this expansion doesn't mess around. There's a lot of heavy demons and far more super heavies in quite tight spaces. A lot of the arenas don't last as long as in, say, Final Sin, but they make up for it in sheer oppression. There's just never a safe space to retreat to from the highly tanky pain elementals, barons and doom hunters. I love the challenge. What I don't love are the turrets. These little bastards hide their weak spot if you look at them for too long. This might be the most gimmicky enemy in the entire game, and I just cannot figure out why they work this way. Are they supposed to disincentivize me from aiming at them and waiting for an opening? This tactic already has a trade-off in that you might be unable to respond to what's happening around you. What's the point of making me flick to them and then making me wait for another opportunity if I failed? It's just kind of boring and a little tedious. This Marauder fight might be one of the worst of the lot, as there's way too little room to move around. How am I going to keep him at medium range now, There's also these 2 parts where you punch a switch to make a crane slowly turn around, so that you can stand on this container before slowly moving back to translocate you. However, if you mess it up at some point, you're gonna have to wait for the crane to go all the way back to its original location, and then do the whole charade again. It kills the pacing. Something else I've taken note of is how poorly this secret is designed. It's quite simple to find where to go if you're using the automap, but without it, the elements are so badly lit and shown to you that it makes me think this was made with the assumption of you using the map to find it. So anyway, we grab the key and the facility fucking explodes for absolutely no reason. We put on this scuba suit and hitch a ride down to the underwater part of the base. The part where we traverse the ring around the central lift feels kind of pointless and really scripted, with how the doors open and work. We could have just swum over to the last airlock, but it's inaccessible right off the bat. Or how about this secret? In order to get these extra lives, you'll have to swim back out into the water and reach this airlock. However, it's normally locked. To get inside, you must first enter the actual airlock you're meant to go through, and then just double back this moment, and the former entrance will be open to you. What's more, if you so much as go into the next hallway, this section will fall apart, forcing you to swim again, but now the airlock to the secret will be locked again. This last fight is a ballbuster, and a long one at that. It starts off with 2 marauders, which is easier than it might seem, but also just really tedious. You don't have the time to perform a full takedown, so you're just plinking away at them when you can. But the actual arena that follows is really fun and challenging. It's a successful increase in intensity from the base game. As far as the music goes, it's important to note that it wasn't made by Mick Gordon. He had a falling out with id Software and said he wasn't going to work on a Doom game again, soon after the base game had released. I'm still butthurt over how they treated him. You can read his extremely long expose with receipts, in a link down in the description. Instead, Andrew Hulsholt and David Levy were contracted for the 2 expansions. They probably had very short notice and not much time to prepare. Plus, we don't know what conditions they were subjected to themselves, so they've done a commendable job on the music given this information. However, on a more absolute level, it's a step below the base game in my opinion. David made the music for this level, and I found it so forgettable that I had to look it up as I was writing the script. This is something I never once had to do while covering the base game. It's intense and I like the synthy elements, but there doesn't feel like there's any substantive melody or idea here, it's just rhythmic guitars and drums. Uncle Sam transfers himself into the body of Samur, and we teleport out. Our main goal now becomes to retrieve the life spear of the father, such that we can restore his physical form, such that he can banish the demons again. You might be wondering how in the absolute shitfuck all of this is supposed to work, and so am I. I've reread the codex pages from this DLC to refresh my memory, and I just cannot understand so many things. The part I've laid out so far is the simple part, by the way. Let's return to this topic once we've completed the next level. In the meantime, Samur is undergoing transfiguration, which is a process of death and rebirth, described back in the codex from the base game. We get to walk around the Ark Carrier a little bit, though there's absolutely nothing to see or collect. The blood swamps is the next level, and I have to address the elephant in the room. The only blood in these swamps is the blood boiling inside of me at the lack of blood outside of me, and the blood inside of the prison demons soon to be outside of them. Like I said previously, the support room dispenser just doesn't have a Slayergate arena associated with it for some reason. The first thing of note in this level is the huge tentacle. It's even more problematic than the small ones, as you can't really kill it fast enough to avoid taking a hit. There's not many arenas in this level, but there's tons of gimmicks. We must travel down both of these two lanes present. The one I picked first here involves us fighting a buffed marauder. Not a bad idea for a one-off gimmick, except I think he's a bit too fast in this state. I don't know if my reaction time is exceptionally slow or what, but I always have to anticipate the green eye attack coming before I even see it, otherwise I'm too slow. I think that's a problem. He is also able to move so fast that, should he wish to, he can always stay in your face no matter where you go. How am I supposed to keep him at medium range now, This level also introduces the spirits. These are the remaining souls of the summoners from the previous game, who will spawn in possessing a demon. A spirited enemy will move much faster, have huge resistances to all damage types, immunities to freeze bombs and on-demand falters, as well as invulnerable weak points. The only way to reliably stop them is the microwave beam mod. Pretty cool idea, but the execution leaves much to be desired. When the possessed demon is killed, the spirit will pop out and remain still for a few seconds, letting you kill it with the aforementioned mod. If you fail to do so, it will soon possess another demon. I've already made my feelings on this clear, but it's also kind of outrageous how it costs a whopping 75 cells for a kill. Furthermore, zapping them doesn't reset the time it takes for them to find a new host, which feels a bit bullshit. If you don't have the plasma ammo already prepared before the demon dies, or at worst chainsaw a demon the moment it pops out, there's just no way to stall it in order to get more ammo. Most of these arenas also spawn in a second non-possessed demon for the spirit to jump into if you fail to kill it in time, which is bullshit too, but also just boring. This will effectively reset all your progress on the exceptionally long process of killing a spirited enemy, but it would also be far more interesting to see some extraordinary spirit-demon combinations. This can rarely happen if the duplicate host happens to be dead for some reason, but have you ever seen a possessed imp? I think I have once or twice, but the creators did all they could to prevent this from happening. What about a possessed gargoyle, revenant or cacodemon? This would add some unpredictability and novelty to arena fights. This monster also fails to make me swap the mods for the plasma gun, as I wasn't married to the heat blast anyway, so this atrocity stays on permanently now. Each of these two lanes also has this anticlimactically easy platforming segment as part of the trial, which apparently thinks way higher of its own difficulty than I do. Oh, and Spectre whiplashes are here because of course they are. The only reason I can think as to why someone thought this was a good idea was because they didn't want people to trivialize them with the lock-on burst. Before the game originally launched, Hugo Martin said the purpose of the regular whiplashes was to make the player turn around to trace a moving target. So why make them near invisible? What purpose does that serve? These things are perplexing in every way, but they're also just not a big problem. At the end of each lane stands a huge arena to cap it off. These fights are some of the longest and most brutal of all the official Doom Eternal content, with a long line of heavies and super heavies waiting to whoop your ass. There's even 2 buff totems in this one, and the finale is a Spirited Baron of Hell, which takes exactly as long to kill as you think it does, that being 10 quadrillion years. The other lane also has this weird gimmick where merely existing inside of this area will damage you over time, and this dog will project a bubble of safety for you to follow. A few times it will absolutely have to take a poop break inside of this beacon, which will attract the caca-consuming demons for a fight. Traveling around at the pace of the dog is boring and slow. Also, you can't really predict where the bubble will appear after the dog leaves the beacon, which means you might very well take unavoidable damage once it's done. This lane makes us fight a possessed Hell Knight too, in order to serve as an introduction to these enemies regardless of where you go first. The arena at the end is a bit easier than the other one, as there's less obstacles to your movement, so it's harder to get caught in an unfavorable position. This one features a possessed Arachnatron, which is not as big of a threat as the Baron, but we've got 2 Archviles making up for it. The final part of the level is this weird gimmick fight. These floating cubes will shift around the air and sporadically open up to attack, which also makes them vulnerable. Once a cube is dead, it will drop down and you must punch it into the shield in the center to progress further. If you fail to do so quickly enough, your progress will be reset for this cube. I really like how they move and behave. It feels so erratic and unpredictable. But they aren't true demons and can't be chainsawed, glory killed, frozen, etc. Therefore this fight is a bit too gimmicky for me. Also, throughout this level there are these yellow spores, which explode when you get near them, and can even regrow in a few seconds. They cannot be shot to deal damage to demons, so they just serve as an annoying nuisance. These things aren't fun to avoid, you just run past them. It'd be more interesting if you could use those to your advantage somehow. The music here is made by Andrew Hulshult, and it pains me to say this, but the combat music might be one of his absolute weakest tracks. There's one part that I kind of like, and it's this one, since it's actually got a semblance of melody and personality. However, at its worst, this track is, not unlike Atlantica, a monotonous and rhythmic slog of drums and guitars, but even more so. Scratch that, this isn't just among Andrew's worst pieces, it's also potentially the worst Doom song in general, though it's got some stiff competition. However, the ambient music here is actually some of my favorite in the entire game. It's exactly what I'd imagine a noxious swamp of death to feel like, and it keeps the parts in between arenas from feeling monotonous. When the level is done, this Titan takes us to this sanctum, where many life spheres are kept. I've reread the codex from this expansion to try and summarize the important parts, but it's hard to provide much context without getting into a ton of backstory. So, the important part is that Hell has a leader, Davoth, or the Dark Lord, who was a creation of the Father, like basically everything else to exist. The Father sealed away Hell and stripped Davoth of his soul. He also had Samur take his soul as well. That's why both of them have their life spheres in this place. However, Doomguy goes off script. The mission objective in this level tells us to destroy the Father's life sphere instead of retrieve it. And so he does, and decides to take Davoth instead, leaving Samur in this painful state. The reason for this is that the Father could have destroyed Davoth entirely but refused, because that was his creation as well. Therefore, resurrecting him might seal the demons away again, but Hell would remain and might still end up threatening other realms. Destroying Davoth would be the surefire way to end the problem entirely. This raises an interesting question. The intern comments on our mission objective at the start.
I see your mission objective states that you're going to destroy the sphere, not retrieve it.
Meaning this is a diegetic element of the game world. If so, Who's giving us these objectives? Someone had to make the decision to not listen to Samur. It was Doomguy's own decision. So why are we getting these objectives? Also, here's another contrivance. Destroying the Father's life sphere was somehow enough to eliminate his powers, but Davoth specifically must be resurrected first before the kill will mean anything. Doomguy making this choice out of his own volition makes sense, and I like this direction. However, the fact that killing Davoth would absolutely end all threat Hell poses to other realms, and would conclude the very idea behind the Doom series, makes it feel like a huge contrivance why we didn't do that earlier, say right after we'd retrieved Sammy Boy back after level 6. There wasn't really any reason why suddenly, after the game was over, he'd discovered this ancient knowledge. And here's yet another contrivance. The portals that humans have access to can teleport people to Urdak as long as they have a life sphere. So this would have been a simpler way than going all the way through Necrovol. Plus, we'd have somebody's life sphere and wouldn't have to go to the Blood Swamps again. After returning to the carrier, all the humans evacuate due to the presence of the Dark Lord's life sphere. The intern is the only one who gets our plan and stays behind, so we teleport to the Holt, which is a more natural part of Urdak. Vega is here and aware he was, at some point, the father. However, he is now a powerless mind who cannot actually do anything other than talk to us. On a visual level, this stage might even be the very prettiest this game has to offer. I love the colors of all the alien flora, and the way it depicts a shattered paradise is nothing short of breathtaking. Gameplay-wise, however, it's less than stellar. We've got a new enemy type called Bloodmakers. These fuckers are entirely invulnerable most of the time, during which they will just spam out these painfully boring bursts of projectiles. Every once in a while they will forego their literal immortality to charge up these really big and even more boring attacks. This enemy is even worse than the Marauder. At least that enemy can be chipped away at with splash damage from behind the shield. But the Bloodmaker? There's nothing you can do. Since we can't progress the arenas until we've killed them, all they have to do in order to win is nothing. And they're still fucking it up. It's like they don't actually want to win. The charged projectiles can be quite dangerous, as they have a big hurt box and slow you down on hit. But they're still really easy to avoid in these wide open arenas, if you're paying attention, and even if you aren't, as they make a loud sound. A headshot with a precision bolt or ballista during the vulnerability window will insta-kill them, showering you with ammo. The way this works kind of reflects my suggestions on the Maker drones, but the enemy itself is just terrible. They take away all of your control over the dynamic of the fight. They're mobile chicanes, and the only way the devs could make you respect them is to make them entirely invulnerable. It's very easy to just ignore them and fight as normal until you hear the loud sound of the charged shots and then do a flick shot. The arenas here also don't really impress me. They just aren't as intense and chaotic as previously. However, the Slayergate arena makes you fight a spirited marauder, which is a right pain. He's even harder than the buffed variant, since he's got what feels like 4 times the effective health. But that's not all, as we've also got multiple Doom Hunters and Archviles. The arena isn't small, but the large elevation differences and walls make it quite cramped. The other standout fight to me is the Spirited Tyrant near the end. It's not a long set piece, it's just one possessed and one normal Tyrant, along with a Doom Hunter. But killing the highly tanky enemy takes a long time, and the increased speed makes him a force to be reckoned with. The very last arena before the boss makes you pick between an arena filled with enemies weak to Blood Punch and one with enemies weak to the Plasma Rifle. Pretty cool gimmick, but both of them are a bit too easy to make for an exciting fight beyond the novelty. The intern here confirms our suspicions that destroying the Dark Lord will also destroy all demons outside of Hell. Okay, I don't really know why that would be the case, but let's start the final boss fight. And it's another ballbuster. Samur is back and wants to stop us from resurrecting Davoth. He completes his transfiguration and actually metamorphoses into this creature, which seems contradictory to what the Codex was saying earlier. There's many phases to this fight, and your progress is saved between each of them. The first part sees us fight him directly. He can teleport around, which makes him quite hard to hit. But his attacks are not very threatening. He can also summon these floating eyes, which constantly deal damage in a wide AoE, serving as roadblocks. When killed, they will drop a little ammo. Phase 2 makes Samur invulnerable and needs us to eliminate two spirits, one in a Hell Knight and another in a Mancubus. The Hell Knight is actually not a huge problem, as two lock-on bursts will stagger him very quickly. The Mancubus is quite tanky, but his low mobility makes him easy to kill, though his high rate of attack also inverts this dynamic. This fight is fine, but it's a bit underwhelming for a boss. Phase 3 is by far the most boring one. The floor becomes electrified and cacos keep spawning in. As you kill more, so do they spawn more. However, your goal isn't to kill them, you're actually just waiting for a timer to run down. Even if you don't know this, fighting two cacodemons at once is far from the peak of entertainment. Anyway, once this phase is done with, the arena changes again. The tiles are now at wildly different altitudes. Samur is back attacking us again, along with a Bloodmaker and two eyes. This is getting really intense. One of these tiles will be occupied by Samur, each eye will remove, say, 2 or 3 tiles, and then there's the Bloodmaker. Oh, and did I mention lasers? There's lasers moving left and right along the arena. Regardless of which tile you're on, you're only going to have 2 or 3 places you can move from there, and the huge amount of roadblocks flying around the arena feels like a bit too much. I'd either make these platforms easier to jump up to, or remove one of the eyes. I hope this wouldn't make the fight too easy though. The final phase is by far the most intense. The arena stays the same, the eyes are gone, and we must kill two spirits again. This time they're inside of a Pain Elemental and a Dread Knight. The latter isn't actually as big a problem as it seems, as it's not very fast. The former though, oh boy, it's spongy as all hell. You can see in the footage it tanked 2 direct BFG shots. And if you happen to get caught near it, may God have mercy on your soul, cause you ain't getting out alive. This fight especially highlights how cramped the arena is. I think lowering the platforms a bit would have been enough to give you more room to breathe. I also think the Pain Elemental's speed boost is way too high here. There is just no time to react to anything. The music in the preceding level is very appropriate, and the tunes here give me vibes of a shattered and corrupted paradise, as it should. But it's just not intense enough to stay memorable and noticeable. Similarly, the boss theme feels like an alternate take on the same track, and I really like this weird synthy melody. It sounds like there's a chaotic and unexploitable pure force inside of the boss. However, again, it's just not intense enough, and too monotonous for most of its runtime. Andrew Hulshot made both of these, by the way. I expected more from him. So, we've reached the ending of part 1. We enter the Luminarium, resurrect the Dark Lord, and he's just like us. Honestly, I still don't really know why that is. Like, I understand he's meant to be a sort of mirror of Doomguy, but how can that be if our protagonist was at some point just a normal human? The Codex from the second part kind of explains it was actually Davos's plan to create the Doomslayer, but he wasn't born then. Remember, this is the same Doomguy from Doom 1, 2, and 64, and he still looked the same. Regardless, this is the cliffhanger ending of part 1. I really like this expansion for its unrelenting difficulty and some of the most intense fights in the series. I'm not a fan of the new enemies, though spirited enemies pose a unique challenge. I tremendously enjoy level 3 aesthetically, though I might have played a bit too much Dark Souls to be in love with the poison swamp that is level 2. The music is seriously underwhelming, but the composers did a grand job given what were probably very difficult conditions and a short notice. I kind of wish we got some new toy to play with. The support runes just aren't transformative enough to be a big deal. The story has become an even bigger mess than it was in the base game, and that's kind of what I was expecting. The story here picks up right after the cliffhanger cutscene of part 1 and, naturally, Doomguy pulls out his shotgun and blasts Davos just in case. but some force field protects him. This is contradictory with what the Codex said about this place earlier. The Codex said if someone were to draw blood here, they'd lose the privilege of resurrection. Not that it's physically impossible to harm another being. The Dark Lord does the comic book "I will be waiting for you" and teleports away. Emora is our goal. It is the capital city of Hell, which we've never heard of up until this point somehow. Only the Gate of Divum can take us there, which is on Earth, within the UAC's possession. And we've never heard of it up until this point, somehow. To power it, we will first need to reach the World Spear and collect this MacGuffin. The World Spear is a celestial object which pierced through the planet of the Sentinels, and originally released the Wraiths. I like that we get some more backstory on things from Doom 4, which actually explains things without making a complete mess out of them. However, this first objective isn't communicated very clearly at the start. While writing the script, I realized that I don't actually remember why we're seeking the World Spear. Vega does say we need a power source, but that sounds like something that should have been said before we'd arrived, so I didn't really make a connection. This is what we're doing here. Right off the bat, the music here is making a really good first impression. Not only does it fit, it also feels memorable and unique. The combat tracks are really strong too. They remind me a bit of a track from Prodeus. Wait, who was the composer for that? One of the new additions here are the meat hook nodes, and they are just boring. The platforming in general is boring, and these are barely ever used as part of combat. Another new addition is the Screecher enemy, who will actually buff nearby enemies if killed. A cool idea, and I don't really have anything negative to say about them. They do spice up the flow of the arena fights, and make for another take on an enemy you're not meant to shoot. Next up, Armored Barons. They are Marauder Barons effectively. They're invulnerable most of the time, but a well-timed shot during another green flash attack will destroy the armor for a time. It can also be broken with plasma fire, even though this isn't an energy shield. They are an even more intrusive and flow-breaking take on the Marauder, and we know how I feel about that. It's also frustrating how the armor will regenerate after some time, which extends the boring do nothing until the eye gets tired of life part of the fight. One thing you'll quickly notice is that the fights feel kind of easy compared to Ancient Gods 1, or even the base game. There's a strong reluctance to use super heavies, and even with the heavies that do appear, the arenas can feel too barren and forgiving. Hugo Martin said after release that this expansion isn't meant to be a nail-biting test of metal, but a celebration of all the things Doom represents, since it's capping off the entire story. I don't think this was the right choice. Lesser skilled players were already scared off by the difficulty of the previous DLC, so all we're left with are the ones who were patient enough to beat it. Those players would be disappointed by the lack of challenge. I also wish it was harder, but that doesn't make this expansion worthless to me, as it's not the only thing I play Doom games for. The variety in level design and music still make me have fun. This one arena, which locks you in a tiny space with purple goo, might be the most bullshit one in this entire campaign. It's like it was just made specifically to destroy you with all the cheap tricks the game can pull on you. After we're done with it, we meet a redeemed betrayer, who gives us the last new proper unlock of the game, his Sentinel Hammer. It's a character ability more than a weapon. Activating it will make the Slayer leap up into the air briefly before slamming it down into the ground, creating a small AoE which stuns enemies and makes them drop ammo. Burning enemies will also drop armor, and frozen ones will drop health. To recharge it, one must destroy 2 weak points or perform 2 glory kills, or one and the other. The stun effect of this weapon is more effective than a falter, and it can even extend the opening on an already stunned Marauder, to the point of being able to one-cycle him just by quick-swapping. No more fancy takedown setups. We've removed the tricky parts and distilled the Marauder to an actual quick-time event. I was joking before, but now it's even more true. On one hand, I'm glad I can spend less time fighting this guy. But on the other, I'm almost wondering what even is the point of his existence now, if it's so simple to take him down. The existence of the Sentinel Hammer in general doesn't fill me with any emotion. It feels a bit unnecessary, as we've already played 16 levels without it, and now I'm supposed to believe the combat loop of the final 3 absolutely requires this thing? It doesn't really do anything, no, you could already freeze, vault or chainsaw and burn demons to get those resources. But now you can just get them all at once. It's so effortless that it almost defeats the purpose of why the base combat systems can be so finicky. This level feels a little more distinct than, say, Taras Nabad, even though it's essentially the same place. While we've got the same big castles, the surrounding areas feel a bit more rural, and like a medieval-ish township, rather than a bustling city. In fact, they reminded me a little of the German village in Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, which I love as a setting. We're introduced to the stone imps, my feelings on which I've already made quite clear. However, despite the one blatant problem of their weakness, I actually like the novelty. They really like to do this unique charge spin attack, which regular imps cannot do, and this sets them apart. However, their animations don't really feel like they belong on a stone creature. They don't move like stone golems or what have you, they just feel like white imps in their movement and behavior. I also want to bring up how, despite now having two enemy types, which borderline require or just require a specific weapon mod to destroy, this still isn't enough to make me swap between them. I'm not married to neither the heat blast nor the sticky bombs, as the former doesn't do anything special, and the latter can be replaced with an arbalest or frag grenade. I don't know how many people really play this way, but I really just find the game so much easier when I don't have to worry about switching my mods. It's never something I need to consider, so I can focus on more pressing matters, and I also never end up making the wrong choice and screwing myself over. This is a failure on the game's part, as this is something the developers specifically said they wanted to do. I'm not sure what I would have done to fix this. I think the biggest problem is that the total amount of weapon mods far exceeds what is usually cited as the upper limit of the number of items a human can hold in their working memory. Now, I'm no psychologist, but the way I understand what working memory is kind of like the RAM of the human brain. It's the amount of things you can consider at any time, not just remember. To prove my point, try to imagine all the weapon mods in this game at once. You can't. A few might spring into mind immediately, but to list out all of them, you'll have to first pull them out of the box that is your long-term memory. And by the time you're done, you'll have to specifically recall which mods you were starting out with, as the new ones will have taken the place of the old ones. It seems a bit unfair to be asking of the player to perform decisions regarding which mods they want if, by the time you've figured out which mod you want and swapped it, you may very well have already taken care of the problem in other ways, had you just ignored this conundrum. The game's pace is just a bit too fast for such robust decision making, and would have fit better in a turn-based strategy game. We have now reached that excessively long cutscene I was talking about earlier, and I still don't really understand what's going on here. Lighting this beacon will rally any Argenta tribes who don't follow the Makers to help us. If you feel this came out of left field, that's because it did. We had no idea such tribes existed up until this point. We thought all of them were following the Sentinels. Also, I could be missing something here, but Vega doesn't say that lighting this thing was necessary to reaching the World Spear. If the only reason we're going after this beacon is for the aforementioned goal, then this is a bit late to be learning why we're even here, as there is no cutscene or dialogue prior to this, which would tell us what we're doing. From the very start of the level, I thought we were going after the World Spear, but apparently our goal was lighting the torch of Kings this entire time. So we travel closer to the World Spear, to this polar region. The fights here aren't all that different, though there's a few standout encounters. This one is kind of weird and gimmicky. It locks you in a narrow passage with explosive barrels, and groups of imps and pinkies rushing in from either side. I do like the novelty, though we are entirely immune to explosive barrels, since we've got all the suit upgrades. So I wish those were a bit of a threat again. A new feature in this expansion is called Escalation Encounters. I'm not sure why that's what they decided to call it. Once in each level, there will be a gore nest, which will trigger an arena fight. You must beat this arena to proceed, and it will also give you a slight upgrade to the Sentinel Hammer. However, the gore nest will appear again, and you have the option of triggering yet another arena fight. Beating the second one will give you a skin. Once again, we've got the problem of having no reason to do the optional part more than once. However, these two battles are properly challenging, and are the standout encounters of this expansion, both in terms of intensity and endurance. I'm not sure how I'd compare the difficulty to Ancient Gods 1. I think they're a little less difficult than the peaks of the previous expansion. I'm not really sure why, maybe it's just caused by the first impression of this campaign being easier. We finally reached our destination, and the visuals are neat, but the cutscene is too fucking long again. Maybe it's more of an Ancient Gods 2 thing than a Doom Eternal thing, so it might have been unfair to point this criticism towards the game in general. Maybe. But we find out the huge rock that pierced this planet is actually a spaceship, on which the elemental wraiths had arrived. Pretty cool detail, but putting another shitty corporeal platforming challenge inside the spacecraft feels distinctly undivine. Our power source looks similar to the Sentinel crystals we'd been obtaining back in the base game, which makes sense, but it also doesn't feel that special anymore. I'd been hoping it would have been bigger or something. The intern opens up a teleporter for us to travel to the Gate of Divum. Not gonna lie, I'm getting a little sick of how many pretentious proper names there are in this game. Reclaimed Earth is up next, and it's an aesthetic which might very well be entirely new to the Doom games, depending on how specific you want to get. The demonic corruption is gone and local flora has taken its place. There's still plenty of demons to go around though, which makes me wonder how much exactly have we managed to achieve. I mean, yeah, not having huge fleshy gore nests is an improvement, but the denizens of hell are just as deadly. This level introduces cursed prowlers, and I do not like them. They announce their entrance with a loud and distinct sound, but behave just like normal prowlers. Except when you get hit, you get cursed and cannot dash or meat hook. You must blood punch the cursed prowler to break the curse. Now, look, I like the idea. I like the idea of a monster you have to catch before it causes any problems. However, they are no more threatening than normal prowlers on a physical level. They aren't any faster, harder to avoid, more aggressive, or even tankier. They had to create an entirely new status effect just for the cursed prowlers to pose any danger. If you pay attention to the spawn and attacks, you have to really fumble something up to get hit. And if you don't get cursed, they are no more threatening than normal prowlers. They've also brought back chain gunners, because of course they have. Except their shields are entirely indestructible, because of course they are. I don't know who's in charge of designing these monsters for the expansions, but they are some of the most creatively bankrupt people in the entire studio. All they've been doing so far is slapping random invulnerabilities or resistances on already existing enemies. These chain gunners are the closest the game's gotten me to dynamically swapping mods on the fly. The lock-on burst for the rocket launcher is indispensable for DPS, but the remote detonation is quite useful for taking out these new enemies. If it wasn't for the fact they have the health of an ant, and merely shooting the ground behind them gets you your remote detonation, without the need for the actual mod. These enemies are too passive and weak to even be considered. They also barely ever appear in arena fights. Speaking of arena fights, they are like an 8 out of 10 on the intensity, but it does kind of feel like the variety of monsters within each arena is at an all-time high, which gives them some really unique flow, and I really enjoy that, especially this first proper arena and maybe the escalation encounters. The final arena is inside this huge UAC building, which contains a gate to the very heart of hell, and of course we knew absolutely nothing of it until the start of this very expansion. Fantastic writing, guys. Really makes me feel like you've thought over and planned every detail. Insert John Carmack's quote about story in video games here. Furthermore, in the codex pages we've been gathering in this campaign, it just suddenly states that all the information we've gathered so far was rewritten history, essentially. And it turns out Davoth was actually the original creator of the Makers, and was turned on and banished by them. This in of itself feels like a cheap plot twist, with zero setup, and therefore zero payoff. However, it also feels like the setup for another potential cheap plot twist later. This last arena throws some quite hard-hitting demons at you, but not many enough for the large open space not to feel barren. The music here is quite good, though I'm not sure it fits this theme very well. It's this really slow and rhythmic riff, which gets a little monotonous, but the unique timbre of the guitar keeps it interesting. So we've reached Imora, which is the capital city of Hell, whatever that means. I don't know what the significance of this place is supposed to be, but the game seems to want me to believe this is a heart of the netherworld. However, this kind of falls flat in light of the fact that this very expansion is the first time we're hearing of a capital city. It somehow wasn't important enough to be even mentioned throughout the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, and one expansion. In the cutscene, we see Davos rocking up in some kind of mech suit. However, remember how we called upon the help of all the free tribes of Argenta to attack Imora along with us? Well, they just couldn't help themselves. Remember how in Ahoy's retrospective on Doom, he summed up the cultural impact of these games with these words?
From influenced to influential.
Well, I think I figured out why this fan service triggers such a visceral negative reaction within me. The series went right back to just being influenced, in chase of trends and bigger numbers. In 10 years, the Funko Pops will go right back to being out of place, and the only thing on your main menu will be a default Slayer on a default podium. I don't have an opposition to a big final assault type of vibe for the closing chapters of a game. In fact, some of these executions can be incredibly exhilarating. However, this is all done in such a cheap and tasteless way. There is no build-up, there are no defined stakes, there is no desperation, there is no personal connection to the other warriors. We don't know any of them. Our protagonist hasn't interacted with these people in any of the main campaigns. The only one who actually gives me any emotional reaction is Valen, the betrayer, who arrives to stand blade in hand along the Slayer again, like they probably did aeons ago. However, this also raises some questions. The betrayer was a commander of the Sentinels, and these people who arrive are fringe folk, outside of the organized order. Valen was also disgraced and outcast, but how exactly did he end up assuming command over this disorganized band of misfits? And how did they even come here? I thought Divum was the only way to reach this place. Anyway, this moment of redemption is quite satisfying, and I do feel like there is a statement being made about how the only thing keeping him from being on the side of good again was his own guilt. Look at that character development! In my Doom game, we have successfully identified our second character of this set of campaigns. Also, I need to mention this line from Vega at the start.
By Hell's law, if the Dark Lord is defeated in ritual combat, any demon outside his realm will be destroyed.
I'm sorry, what? There was no mention of a Hell Law back when the intern said the same thing, back in the previous expansion.
If you kill the Dark Lord, any demon outside of their world will be destroyed.
This is fucking lame. It turns out that killing Davos doesn't throw the demonic forces into chaos. It doesn't physically prohibit them from being outside of Hell or anything like that. We're effectively winning a legal battle, and the demons are such good and law-abiding citizens that they will obey some words some motherfucker wrote some fucking where we don't even know. Hey, if the demons can obey a Hell Law, then why can't they obey Earth Law? If they are intelligent enough to create a judicial system, then why aren't they intelligent enough to be communicated with? You literally didn't have to say anything, and things would have been acceptable. Not good, not okay, just acceptable. The aforementioned line from the intern is quite dry and doesn't explain much, but I'd rather have no explanation than this explanation. This is the equivalent of introducing midichlorians into Star Wars, to me. Now for the level itself. There's two parts actually. The first half takes place outside the walls of Imora, on these random rocks. This doesn't feel like a distinct and interesting location, and the combat encounters are similarly mundane. Even the escalation encounters feel a bit less intense and chaotic than in the previous two levels. The music also fails to inspire much in me. It's kind of intense, but just not memorable. There's nothing unique about it. So we happen to reach the Sentinel catapult thing and get launched over into Imora proper. I am not going to let any contrivance off the hook, but had this catapult left a portal right next to where we had started the level, this entire half could have been skipped. And now, what exactly was the point of this entire assault if the only Sentinel units to have breached the walls were the aircraft? Anyway, this setting here isn't bad. It turns out Imora has an almost cyberpunkish or sci-fi aesthetic. I have to bring this up because it's been kind of sitting on my chest for a long time, but I feel it's pretty lame how the entire theme of this final level of the mainline Doom saga is a sci-fi city, and the big bad boss is essentially a guy in an armored core. Man, not gonna lie, this thought just makes me want to play AC6 instead of Doom Eternal. Hey, here's a thought. There's not much antagonism built between Davoth and Doom Guy. They meet once in the cutscenes between the two expansions, you see him in this Imora cutscene, and then you go and fight him. Bringing up AC6 made me think how everyone loves to hate V2 Snail, because he's been contacting us many times throughout the campaign. And he's not even the final boss. This snot-nosed shit-devouring smug bitch with a stick up his ass deserves no better. To elaborate on the previous point, I always felt Hell was at its most fearsome and potent when it was an occult and paranormal influence with some sci-fi elements, which exerts its power through corporeal monsters. When it felt actually demonic, you know? But this last location and level might as well belong to some generic sci-fi human faction. There's nothing demonic about it. Compare this location with, say, the Citadel from Half-Life 2. Does Imora feel any more demonic, occult, scary, paranormal? I mean, it's red, I guess, but that's the only minor difference I can think of. Inside of the walls, we also face these demonic troopers, which don an armor set from the Doom 4 multiplayer and use the Reaper weapon from the same place. They are only worth discussing insofar as how little a problem they pose. Easy to avoid, low mobility, a health bar smaller than even the basic zombies. I swear there was a point in time when merely meat hooking onto a trooper was enough to kill them, but this seems to have been changed. Oh, and they also drop ammo. They're actually more helpful to you than they are harmful. Hey, this cutscene at the start shows the troopers down among the rocks, but we only encounter them inside. There's only a few arenas left. This one is actually quite hard. It's two marauders again, but in tighter confines. There's also screechers around the place, which make it really risky to be using frag grenades or the rocket launcher. I actually struggled with this one. I accidentally set off one screecher and paid the price. Now, what I found here is that the screecher buff will disappear over time. This is unfortunate. I do think there should be a way to get rid of this effect, given how easy it is to activate. However, a timer on it means the most effective tactic is to just run away and wait. Still, this encounter has a lot of personality, character, and challenge. Next up, we've got a more traditional arena, the last one we'll be faced with. It boasts the signature Ancient Gods 2 enemy variety, and even tries challenging with a Spirited Baron. But it's nothing we haven't really seen so far. When this fight is over, a Sentinel aircraft takes us to the Dark Lord's tower thing, and we also see Doomguy flying around with a meat hook, blasting demons. This looks pretty fun, I wish I got to do that. The very final non-boss encounter of the Doom saga is a shit ton of stone imps amidst a sea of shotgun shells. It's about as monotonous as you are probably imagining it to be. Not a good final impression, kind of disappointed. But anyway, we are about to fight the Dark Lord. He's more evil than Satan, more evil than Lucifer. He's a dude with red eyes and an armored core. The very final fight of such a long series of games is finally. It's a big marauder that heals when you shoot him. He heals when he hits you. He can summon wolves whenever he wants. He will run around attacking you, and you just have to avoid these attacks until he does this one specific attack. You shoot him, he gets stunned, You use the Sentinel Hammer to extend the stun and lay into him. If this sounds disappointing, that's because it is. Of course, there's random zombies standing around the edges of the arena, graciously giving you resources. It's such a chore. It's boring and annoying for the same reasons I've already discussed with the Marauder, except this is even worse. The fight is 5 stages long, and I think that's more to limit how much he can heal, rather than actually making meaningful changes. When phase 1 is done, he teleports us back to Earth, for some reason. Hey, I thought we got rid of the demonic corruption on Earth. Are you trying to tell me now that we have genuinely accomplished nothing of significance back in the base game? He now summons 2 dogs instead of just 1, and he's got this really hard to avoid charge attack. Your best bet at dodging it is to dash twice to the side the moment he's preparing it, but I find it hard to react in time. Oh hey, beating the next 2 phases gives us a cutscene, with some dialogue. Are we going to learn something new and interesting about the past?
Tell him. He is the first being, and my creator. When he fell, I ascended.
Oh no.
They lied to you, Slayer. Imora.
Oh no! Kids, if you ever want to write a story, you should play Doom Eternal and its expansions, so that you know exactly what not to do. I don't even know what to say. This is the worst way to do a plot twist. It is not shocking, it is not surprising, it is just fucking lame. It invalidates everything we've been learning so far, and the only setup was this shitty codex page from the previous level. And you know what's worse? It changes absolutely nothing. It just means the original creator of the universe was this guy, and not this guy. It doesn't change anything about your allegiances, or those of another character. It's just a random fact that would have changed nothing, had it not been there. This leaves me feeling so empty that the story beat is just nothing to me. Should I disregard it? Should I acknowledge it and play along? I don't care, just pour me another drink for fuck's sake. And now he teleports us to the Sanctum again, for no reason other than we need some scenic places to have our epic final battle in. He is now capable of summoning spectral versions of some demons, which have a fraction of the normal health. This is actually pretty cool. It adds some intensity to the dynamic by giving you some things to fight. Hey, here's a novel idea. This is a first-person shooter, right? Well, you see, fighting these monsters is pretty fun. So, how about you make a game where we fight these monsters? You know, because it's an action game. This isn't fighting. This is waiting for the green light and then doing a QuickTime event. Just remove this big fucker and make me a game about fighting these guys, alright? Oh, I meant to delete the back. The presentation is pretty weak as well. I think the design of this mech is not very good. There's not much detail on this model, so it looks quite cartoony and underbaked. These horns don't really look like demon horns, but more like some kind of lanky antlers, and the energy shield is comically small. The animations look kind of crap as well. There's not much weight to many of his attacks, or even just his walk. Look at how he walks. These legs look like they have zero inertia or mechanism behind them. These sword slashes are well telegraphed and readable, but something about the way he swings looks unnatural and impotent. Hey, you know what's a game that's got mechs, which have great animations, and you can even wield various blade-like armaments? Serious Sam Siberian Mayhem. This fight, and the entire expansion really, shows why I was concerned about the DLCs being the finale to the Doomguy saga. It's undercooked and underwhelming. I really wish they just made a full-on sequel to present the story, and maybe have the expansions be some prequels, or what have you. I promise this is the last thing I'm going to rag on about this fight, but the music in both the Immoral level as well as the Dark Lord boss are really forgettable. I'm glad Andrew Holsholt got the honor of composing the very final combat track of the Doom series, but he kind of dropped the ball, not gonna lie. These 2 tracks are the only 2 level and boss scores in the entirety of Doom Eternal that I cannot recall in my head. I mean it, mention any level or boss fight, and I am running through that track in my head. Except for these 2. They are so indistinct and conventional. So we've got one last cutscene to run through. Of course, we cannot actually kill the Dark Lord until the cutscene plays. Cutscene Doomguy gets the honors. I don't really know what the reason is for us taking off the helmet, other than to show the audience we look exactly alike. Davoth gives up, I guess because he's just waiting now to take the blade. And Doomguy says a word out loud. I think for the first time in the series, actually.
Tell me, have you nothing to say to your creator before you strike him down?
And you know what? This isn't the worst thing he could have said. It's quite poignant and a surprise in of itself. I'm glad he didn't end up saying some generic edgy superhero bullshit like, "It's Doom in time," and then Doom all over the place. And next our protagonist faints because he was made by Davoth? That's what Vega says, and it doesn't really explain anything. Honestly, I still don't know why. Yes, the Doomslayer is a mirror of the Dark Lord, in that they are both the fiercest warriors of their people. The Ancient Gods 1 also describes how the creation of the Slayer was Davoth doing, as an act of vengeance against the Samur. I'm going to ignore how this might have been the most silly and roundabout way of enacting his wrath, but A. Doomguy was born before this, and the Dark Lord already was in existence for a long time, and B. The power was already given to him. Why does the death of Davoth deprive him of it? Still, we get entombed in the Sanctum alongside all the remaining life spheres. Potentially the most sacred place in existence. Not an unsatisfying place to rest, for someone who was just a regular space marine at some point in time. Well, we reached the end of another Doom Eternal critique video. Honestly, I might have analyzed this ending portion too hard, and I'm feeling quite fatigued by now. To try and summarize my points, Ancient Gods 2 absolutely fucked up the story and made me never want to get invested in another tale by its software again. The difficulty is significantly easier than the previous expansion, and it feels like the wrong choice. The Sentinel Hammer is fine, though it shows just how bad Marauders are as an enemy. The Stone Imps are lacking, the Armored Barons are bad, the Chain Gunners are not a problem, the Demonic Troopers are pathetic. The final boss fight feels anticlimactic and is just weak mechanically. The music in the first two levels is quite strong, but the score on the other two is unremarkable. You might have noticed I did not talk about how progression and secrets work in the second DLC, and that's because there is none. All secrets are just mundane ammo or health pickups. The two expansions, taken as a totality, have been kind of underwhelming in the face of the base game. I don't know if this is a sign that it should focus on making full games rather than expansions. Maybe I wouldn't go that far, but it certainly shows why wrapping up story arcs and entire sagas in small DLC packs is a bad idea. At the very least, id should not have committed to releasing both within a year of the base game, but taken more time. Thanks for watching.